Hello, I'm the Smoking Cheddar, but you probably already knew that. So I'm back with another unit build video this week. We call this the Jack because it's the Jack of Trades. Now, this is going to be an infantry build video. However, as the name implies, you can quite literally apply this to any unit on the ground in the game. So there's not going to be any, oh, I use this on such and such as blah, 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 blah. Don't worry about it. This officer setup is good not just for infantry damage, it's not good just for tank damage, it's also good for artillery damage and artillery against bases or against units, and the same goes for the infantry. So while I do have a picture of an assault rifle right above my head right now, I will be looking at all of the tech for the artillery, the infantry and the tank units. Only in advanced. We won't be going into the modern tree because this is just a unit build I suggest if you are not sure which direction to go in. If you have a bunch of tanks and you're not sure if you want the next unit to be an artillery piece, an infantry piece, get these units, these officers set up in the way that I suggest, or at least as close to as you can get it, and you won't have a problem. Anytime you need to swap the unit for something else, you can do that. So anyway, I introduce the Jack of Trade, the Master of None. Let's have a quick look at the advanced on the ground, shall we? Now, originally this was going to be one of 3 separate videos, but the combinations for the officers were basically identical. So that's why you're getting effectively a 3-in-1 setup here. And I think realistically this is going to be an incredibly good setup for just about everyone in the game. If you like to leave the base at any stage and fight out in the field, or even defend or just siege, this has kind of got all bases covered to a degree that seems a little unfair, if I'm perfectly honest, and I'm kind of working towards this myself. Anyway, we'll start with the infantry, we'll go on to tanks, then we'll do artillery. We won't be doing unit parts, and we won't be doing modern tech for the obvious reasons that this video will be long enough as it is, and no one wants to listen to me ramble for that length of time. Hell, I don't want to listen to me ramble for that length of time, and I make these videos, I've got to then edit them. It's mostly, if I'm honest, it's mostly me. I don't want to listen to me talk that much. Bunker, damage, resistance, coefficiency bonus out of the infantry tree, which is going to be handy when you're out in the field. Not so much when you're inside the base defending it with your infantry, but when you're out in the field, this is going to come in exceptionally handy. It doesn't really matter which infantry unit you go with for this build because they're each going to bring their own flavour to the battlefield. However, if you do have to specifically pick one out of the 3, I would recommend the Liberty, as with the infantry and the fact we're using... Oh, nearly got some spoilers there, but when we're out in the field, we're looking for utility predominantly, and this is going to provide the utility for us. Doesn't mean to say that the Vanguard are no good, it's just that we're not really building on critical strike, we're looking more at damage intensity as time goes on, so this isn't really going to be relevant for us. And the conscripts will be good because obviously we take less damage and we also increase our protection range, so this is also good, but realistically out of the 3 I would probably do this build with the infantry, aiming towards the using this utility with Liberty. Now obviously we have the damage intensity bonuses, we're going to need all 3. We will need infantry speed because we're out in the field. Blast mitigation bonus as is the same as well. And of course HP and firepower go without saying. So we've breezed through that just so you're aware. When we're looking at this in the infantry terms, we are considering mostly Liberty, but it's not really necessary. It's just going to be a nice added flavour towards the end of the build, which will make sense once we get into the summary at the end. Now onto the tank tree. Obviously modern fire control systems will give us an additional flat crit rate of 5% with a crit damage strike of 50% bonus, bringing that bonus from 150 up to 200, which is very nice, but it's not something we actually need. What we are interested in though is the damage resistance bonuses and of course the damage intensity bonuses of all of them. As for the tanks in particular, we're not really interested in the super heavy at all. We're mostly interested in the light, the MBT, and of course the hunter and helicopter, because this is where we're going to get a lot of damage done. Sloped armor resistance obviously, and tank penetration damage is going to go a long way when you're stacking an intensity on the build. And yet again, the firepower and the HP. Let's have a look at the artillery quickly. God of War, when your artillery attacks, there's a 10% chance your next attack load time will be reduced by 40%. So obviously this just goes without saying, you're going to drop more shells on a target, which is going to be very nice. We are going to want the artillery load time reduction maxed out to 5%. We're also going to want the damage resistance bonuses, as we are planning on being out in the field, and the artillery damage intensity bonuses, as well as, you guessed it, the firepower and the artillery HP. Now you might have realized I skipped over the type of unit we'd be looking for in the MBT. For this build it does not matter for the type of MBT. As with the artillery, the rocket truck 50-50, you could use this on a rocket truck. Personally, I would probably go with a howitzer, but if you did want to use it, a rocket truck's viable. Howitzers are probably what I'm going to recommend towards the end of this video, but that doesn't mean to say that the anti-tank gun and the RL are not viable for this. They are completely viable builds for this, but their targeting will be different. So in terms of the ATG, obviously you're going to be missing out on a lot of skill damage on an enemy base. You're going to be missing out on a lot of other things, but you'll gain a lot of intensity and a lot of damage penetration powers, and it's going to be nice in open field unit to unit attacks. And also this build will be good in terms of base defense. So obviously anti-tank, this will still be a good build for the anti-tank. The RL goes without saying. I mean, you can scoot around and you're going to be dropping damage, those quick fire rockets on everything with damage intensity. It'll be very nice, but I do stand by the fact that you're probably going to want this on a howitzer, and more than likely you're going to want this on a Martyr howitzer. Anyway, that is me briefly skimming through the technology, because we're not really interested too much in the tech this week, as the tech is pretty much the same. We want the HP, the firepower, we want the damage intensity, the damage resistance, and the faction specific advanced tech. We're not really worried too much about the modern tech, because this is something you're looking to build into. This is if you're new to the game and you have access to these officers style build. Normally I target my build videos for people who are slightly further along, but the reason why I wanted to go back to basics with this one is because it involves two specific officers. And speaking of which, shall we have a look at them now? Say hello, Caramel. Okay, so naturally the first officer is going to be Lady Shadow. Now, because we're looking to be out in the field, we want a field officer, and we have a field skills officer. And this is going to, towards the end of this officer section, you're going to see why I'm recommending these two officers, and I'm saying it can fit on any unit in the game. So first of all, we want to look at the reasons why we're using this officer. Once she is awakened, that tactical skill is dealing 1,800, and it is also splashing into adjacent grids up to 3 enemies within 2 map grids for 360 each, at a maximum of 20% total HP of the target. So we are limited, but when we're out in the field that doesn't really matter too much, because 20 HP is 1/5. It is still a nice chunk of damage, and we're looking to deal damage out in the field, so this is perfect. In terms of base defense, this is going to augment the Argent and Fist, Argent Flame and Stinger Fist combo. It will not replace it, as some people keep saying, oh, this is going to be rubbish because it's not dealing that much. I say to you that you're considering this wrong. This is geared towards field play, and it augments your defense. It doesn't blow the defense up like the Argent Flame and Stinger Fist combo do, but it does give you the same ability at a reduced damage. So it's just going to give a little bit more. It's going to give a little bit extra. And that's also why we want her as captain, because in a defensive situation, we want this skill to pop off first. So we're dealing as much damage to as many targets as possible. This is also why we want her as the captain out in the field. So let's have a look at the rest of the skills quickly. We do have firepower and HP buff. We have a normal attack boost, which we're going to leverage really hard on any unit, which is, like I said, only countered by normal attack resilience. It's easier to find the normal attack boost than it is the normal attack resilience, and this stat, when you're using a field attack like an MBT, infantry, or an RL, this is a very dangerous stat to stack, especially if you're already stacking a lot of damage intensity. Very, very nice. And also we get a nice little officer skill boost here of an additional 20%. That's going to go a long way. We have Intel Master. Increases the damage intensity of this officer's troop by 20% while in the field, and the damage intensity by an extra 10%. So we've got 20% and then an additional 10% while we're out in the field. So this is a 30% damage intensity, and you can see why I'm saying we need to focus predominantly on resistance and damage intensity out in the field. We're not really looking to have the skill shots finish the target off. We're looking for the normal attacks to do so, but we are going to leverage high levels of firepower regardless when it comes to these units, and a high skill damage output. And as we said earlier, we are getting a 1800, and if there's nothing within 1 map grid of the unit, we're still getting an additional 360. That's on top of the 360 splash, so you're still going to be hitting for over 2k as long as there is 1 map grid between you and whatever you're targeting. So very, very nice. Very, very nice. Now, what skills did I choose? Naturally, I went with Deadly Strike. Deadly Strike's going to give us a 20% damage intensity, and for the special skill, because we're out in the field and we would like to increase that damage resistance, we're going with this 20% with 2 map grids over 20 seconds when we enter combat, which is going to be very, very, very useful indeed. Now, obviously, this skill I haven't got to level 5 yet. It's on its way. It's being planned to go on its way, because as you can see here, this actually happens to be in my lineup next to Warrior Wiz at the moment on an artillery piece, but I will get to that later, or perhaps during the live stream that's planned. Now, who are we using as the aid? And we'll be using Margarita, because Margarita is equally as unfair. Probably, I say equally as unfair, that's not strictly true. She is extremely unfair out in the field, but she doesn't have that level of damage output when it comes to splash. But what we do have is we have a skill shot that does 1800 that can be boosted up to 550. Now, this is why we have her as the aid. Now, if you remember, we can deal up to 20% damage output as a splash attack, and providing the target is below 75% when she fires her skill shot, our skill shot goes from 1800 to 1800 plus 550. So we're going to actually increase the amount of skill damage we do providing they're below 75%, which is why we wanted Shadow first, and it's why we want Margarita as the aid. It gives us a small window of opportunity to deal a quarter of their health and then really hit home with a skill shot. But this is the skill we're mostly interested in, which is obviously we get a 75% chance to either flashbang or gas the target. Now that is either going to increase their skill timer by 1 second or effectively make them miss their next shot on you, which when you're out in the field with a high rate of fire, something like a light tank, a helicopter or infantry, this skill is exceptionally powerful because you're constantly cycling this skill off with a 75% chance, and it can pop off once every 8 seconds. And you've got to remember that's a 75% chance on hit. Something like the infantry is going to be dishing out hundreds of attacks over the course of several seconds. So that's really good if you're running infantry and you're out in the field, because it basically means you're going to take away the possibility of them being able to land a single attack. A single attack doesn't sound like a lot, but it can make the difference between your infantry unit standing and their tank not, or perhaps their artillery not standing. And that is why she's a very good officer. Now let's move on to the rest of the skills. Naturally, we have a damage intensity and damage resistance, which is what we're looking for. We also have the chance to dodge. We're out in the field, a chance to dodge is indeed something very nice, and it goes up to 10%. So 1 in 10 damaging attacks on your target are basically not counted. Think about it. That's pretty good. We also have a firepower buff of 30%. And we have a damage intensity buff of 15%, and like I said, we've already discussed the critical strike. Naturally, we have gone for damage intensity, and also as the balanced skill, we've gone for damage intensity and damage resistance. Although, to be fair, you could just go for a damage resistance or an HP, or you could just go for an HP firepower balance. This skill is more of what you need it to be when you need it. And it's really important to remember that this officer setup is not really a build as such, because it's not specifically targeted at an individual unit. It's targeted at any unit you need in that slot, or perhaps any unit you could put in that slot. It's a great way for you to deal skill damage to a base. We have 2 officers that natural stat at 1800, both that we can increase that by 360 and 550 respectively in terms of skill damage. You put that on an artillery piece, that's quite a lot of damage you're going to be able to push on an enemy base. Likewise, if you're using an MBT or a helicopter, you're going to be able to deal a hefty amount of unit damage and a hefty amount of skill shot damage. And let's not ignore the infantry. And this goes back to the start of the video where I said, remember, if you are using infantry, if you're using the Liberty infantry, don't neglect the fact that we have a smoke bomb in that tech tree that we can use, and we can leverage that quite heavily with this build, because again, we're using Margarita. She stacks well with anything that you need to do a large amount of skill damage with, or anything you need a utility attack on, which is why she is so good. Now obviously you're not going to be dealing massive amounts of critical strike damage with things like a helicopter or an MBT. You're not going to be dealing massive amounts of unit damage versus a base, but you will be dealing a lot of skill damage in that regard. And when it comes to the damage intensity of things like the tanks and the helicopters and the infantry, you're going to be dealing a lot of unit damage out in the field to other units by virtue of the amount of bonuses we have stacked. Now obviously you could tailor your trained skills specifically towards tanks by taking the unit attack special, critical strike and unit attack special skill from Rapier. Let me just have a quick show of that so you understand what I'm saying, so I don't get my words in too much of a muddle. So if we look at Rapier, so we've got a normal attack boost and a critical strike. So something like this would also be good in the build if you're using tanks, because we're going to get ourselves a critical strike of 25%, and if we're using something like a light tank, or if we're using something like a helicopter where we've got a relatively high rate of fire, this critical strike going off is going to be pretty nice. We've also got a normal attack boost here, and also it's worth pointing out that this special is not necessarily something that we should just pass up. If we're using the Vanguard Infantry, for example, this special will work with the Vanguard Infantry because it is not tied into the unit. The only reason why I went for the damage resistance is because, well, if you're picking something like Infantry and you're going double damage, or you're picking MBT and you're going double damage and you're out in the field, it is very much a DPS race, and you can either try to mitigate the damage incoming, or you can try to increase the damage outgoing, and I went with the former of that, on the basis that if you are going with infantry you're going to get a bunker coefficiency, and if you are going down the tank tree you're going to get a lot of choices and a lot of opportunities in the tank tech tree to increase that HP. And also it's nice to have that damage resistance on the artillery, because we all know that artillery is weak as piss. It's just gonna get wiped out too quickly as soon as something gets within range. And that's really how the build is going to work. It's really going to work with you just using these two officers in pretty much the same way. You can donate this unit, whichever you choose it to be, to an AG to fight, or you can use it as a defensive unit, or you can use it out in the field. It really is the jack of all and the master of none. I don't think this is a bad officer setup at all. This isn't really a build, it's an officer setup, because we can just swap any unit because it's versatile, it's field, it's skills. Both of the officers are versatile field skills. We're matching those, and they're both set with intensity, and we're increasing that intensity. All we're doing here is just choosing what unit you, as the player, want to use. Don't worry about what I'm doing, worry about what you are doing. I'd like to get Margarita completed in the near future. I think she's going to be beneficial for stuff like this. I really do. I think going forwards, particularly with the 5th generations coming out, she's going to become more relevant, especially now we're seeing more 1800s coming out, especially those that are going to have 1800 plus extra, like Margarita does, or like the Shadow does. So we're really looking at being able to push that skill damage very high, and obviously the artillery loves skill damage, and you know, skill damage against a base is second to none. We can level bases very quickly, and that's why the Shadow is, you know, Lady Shadow is on an artillery unit for me, because I want to leverage that skill damage. I want to leverage those intensity bonuses, and yeah, I think this is just going to be a pretty decent setup. So anyway, I've been the Smoking Cheddar and you've been very patient. A link to the Discord will be in the description box down below. I am actually on holiday from work this week. I'm not really sure as to my status with Lilith in terms of being in the content creator program anymore. So this is for those of you who make it to this stage in the video. You know, sometimes I put in a bit extra at the end here. Now, they've been talking some time about getting me to sign all these different things and getting me to do all these different things, and I just want to upload videos when I can be bothered. And if you want to give me something for it, that's fine. But they have now finally, after several months of saying they're going to stop it, stopped giving me little extras in game for making these videos, which is actually kind of a relief, because I'm now no longer pressured to make one of these at minimum a week. And it also means that I don't have to do just Warpath videos anymore. For those of you who do make it this far, you're generally kind of interested in not just the content, but generally, I feel, the sort of things I have to say. I've always made a variety of gaming content. Lilith's Warpath is just the most recent in a long line of that. And that will never continue. That will never be something that continues forever. If you look back into the history of this channel back as far as 2013, I started off with Battlefield 3 and Star Wars The Old Republic, progressed into Rust, or it might have been Rust and then them two, I don't really remember. The point is that at some stage this content will change, it will move on, and I know that's going to annoy a lot of people who have subbed to this channel. This channel was never about me trying to make money, never about me trying to make a name for myself. This channel was always intended, and will continue to be so, a record of the things that I enjoy doing. And I won't allow anyone to tell me what I can and cannot create. I will not sign any documents that Lilith send me anymore. I will not be logging into their content creator zone anymore. And if they so desire to remove me from the content creator Discord, I do not care. I did feel obliged while they were giving me a few extras to pump out a few extra videos. That has stopped this week. This is in case I die. Plain and simple. You guys are just here for the ride. This is a documentary for me, and it's ongoing, and it's not going to stop. I'm sorry if this is a bit real, because normally I like to finish with a sarcastic comment or something. I normally leave these things out of my video because these are quite personal to me, but I do feel that I owe those of you who make it to the final few minutes of my video an explanation as to why I might suddenly stop making these videos. I like Warpath. I think it's one of the greatest RTSs ever made. It's being heavily monetized and being taken in a direction I don't particularly agree with. But while people still invest in terms of thousands of dollars into those microtransactions, they're going to continue down this path, and I believe that if that stopped, they would just kill the game. They want us as content creators to advertise things to you. I'm not about that. I'm about giving you guys information on how to make the game more fun for you and more challenging for me. The more officers they give us, the better that is, in my opinion. I won't sign up to the private test server or the test server to create my content early, and I'm certainly not going to be told when to release content in terms of this information is going to be late in terms of what Lilith have asked or demanded of, depending on how you want to view the message this morning. They said that all of this content must be done before the new patch comes out. Excuse me, this is not a fucking job. This is a hobby. This is a record of me playing games. And I know I've gone on quite a bit here, but I just really want to put it to you guys who are here for this bit. Just how much that sort of behaviour pisses me off. This is a video game. It's a piece of shit mobile RTS. It has a desktop release. I think it is absolutely fantastic. It could be a million times better. And this was the gripe I had with Escape from Tarkov, is the devs continuously refused to listen to the player base and kept going in a direction which was closer to more monetization. How much more money can we squeeze out of the community? And now as a result, after years and years and years of that happening, the EFT community, while it still exists, is no longer growing. It is, in fact, shrinking. And this community, the Warpath community, we're all seeing it. It's shrinking day by day. More and more people own multiple accounts from people that have quit or have subsequently passed. I'm really sorry, guys. I needed to get that off my chest, and I needed it to not be in the live stream, which I am planning for later this week, or possibly tonight. I don't know. By the time you see this video, I might have done a live stream. I might not have. Who the fuck knows? I certainly don't. Anyway, drink some water, you know, go outside, touch some grass, lift some weights. Hug your cat.